Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whichever the case may be. For all of you listening out there across the crazy planet Earth, welcome to Season 13 of Vestiges After Dark. And I am your host, Bishop Bryan Ouellette, coming to you live from the deep woods of western Georgia on this February 24th, 2026. As we like to always start off every season with everyone's favorite show, Open Lines, Open Topics, usually over the course of a break. There's a lot of questions that come in, a lot of things on your mind, and we are here to answer them tonight on Vestiges After Dark. Well, hello, everybody. Once again, I am your host, Bishop Bryan Ouellette, with my co-host, Jamie Wolfe.
Good evening, everyone.
We're back for a brand new season, and we have, I think, something like 14 or 15 episodes set up for the next several months, all the way to the middle of June. So that should keep your appetites wet for a while anyway, before we go on the summer break. And I'm going to have to be a little bit cautious with the breaks now. We're going to have to figure something out. I have to talk with Jamie and Tracy and April and Father Chris to see what we can come up with, because I finally, over this period of time, figured out what was going on with our TikTok feed. I didn't really read everything as closely as I probably should have, but let me explain to you that for the first time in what seems like months, we are now back live on TikTok, which is really important because back when we were airing on TikTok live, we had our largest number of audience from that location. In fact, we were hitting sometimes 300 or 400 live viewers at on that location itself. We're on YouTube, which is our second greatest. It's usually around 30 or 40 maybe, depending upon, the excitement for the show. And of course, getting back in the rhythm of things before people realize, oh, we're back on the air. I've been putting out these little shorts, and this is how I found out about the TikTok problem, is I've been putting out these little shorts to get everyone ready for this new season. And I'm going to keep doing that, at least for a year, to see how it's working. Right now, it seems to be doing pretty well. We're hitting, 400 or 500 on some videos, sometimes 600 views. Not too bad for, not being terribly active on places like TikTok and Instagram, even Facebook. I'm not terribly active on these locations. I don't really interact a lot on social media anymore. I really don't like social media. I only do it out of necessity. But anyway, I was putting these shorts out, and I purchased a service that helps me to do that. And these shorts are different clips to kind of get people excited about the various topics we cover. So I picked some good ones. And I guess we were doing so well on TikTok that TikTok offered me the opportunity to reactivate my live privileges. So I said, of course I want my live privileges back. I don't know why you took them in the first place, because there was no, violation strikes against me for anything. I really didn't know.
No, nothing, right?
Didn't know. Yeah. So this time I read all of the literature, and guess what? This is what happened. TikTok gives you 180 days from the invitation Oh, I'm sorry, 14 days from the invitation to go live. If you go live at least twice within that 14-day period, you then get 180 days to go live throughout before they cancel your privileges. You have to do, in order to keep that status going, though, beyond the 180 days, you have to go live at least 3 times for 25 minutes or more every month. So when we went on break, we violated the terms of service on live feed, and that's why we lost our privileges on TikTok. So in order to keep them, we're going to have to figure something out during the breaks, because as long as we air this show every week, we'll be fine. But we're going to have to figure something out in the meantime to keep the privileges active, because I don't want to isolate our TikTok audience. I know right now there probably is not a whole lot right there. There's really only 5 people on TikTok. We thank you for being with us, but
yes,
it will grow. It will grow as people find out about this.
Figure out we're back.
Yeah, that this is a weekly show and it's back on live because it was taken off for such a long time. We really appreciate our TikTok audience. Let me tell you, you guys are fantastic. And really, I get the most positive interactions from you. When I put something on Facebook, it's usually very negative. I get back a lot of negative people on Facebook, sometimes even on YouTube. But TikTok has been largely positive, honestly. And I shunned that service for a long time because I thought it was just like, it's just brain rot with these short, ADHD 2-second videos. Yeah, it can be.
It can be.
So I didn't have much respect for it, but I actually have a lot more respect now because TikTok's not just one thing. It's a lot of different things. And the algorithm is a lot more favorable. Just to give you an idea, those little videos I've been putting out there, getting 400 or 500, sometimes 600 hits on TikTok. Those same videos go out to YouTube at the same time. You know how many we get on that? Well, the first 3 got about 500 or 600 hits. After that, 3, 5, maybe 9 hits on YouTube. And Facebook, it's in the hundreds. Instagram's in the hundreds. All right. But on YouTube, it started out in the hundreds. Now it's down to single number views. You want to know what's going on? I really think it is I'm not going to call it a shadow ban because that implies that there's something like there's a malevolent intent. I don't think it's malevolent intent. This is what I think is going on. YouTube is a place we stream the mass. And I think that when every now and then we would notice this, we would stream the mass and we would go from our usual 40 people watching to hundreds, even thousands. And then all of a sudden, it didn't happen. Then it would happen maybe every 6 months, it would happen again. And then the next several masses, nobody watching them. What I think happens is that because it's religious content and the algorithm is sending this out to a large number of people, many of which are probably don't have much tolerance for Christianity, Catholicism, or the mass, or ritual, or antiquated things like what they would consider antiquated things. I think what they do is they put a thumbs down or they block the content on their feed that says, I don't want to see this. And that tells the algorithm, this channel doesn't put out good content, so don't promote it. And I think that's what's happening. I think it's just a completely an algorithm thing. So what we need all of you to do is please go to our YouTube channel. And when you see the shorts, when you see any of our videos, like and share. That helps the algorithm tremendously, and it puts it out there because we do not, and this is the last announcement I have before we start getting into tonight's show. I got 2 more announcements, but the next one's kind of fun. The only other thing I wanted to mention about it is that we do not advertise. We do not monetize the channel. But, however, I am going to start sharing some of my music. And this season, we're going to be playing a lot of the music that I've written.
It's good, guys. It's good.
Thank you. I appreciate it. You'd like it, all right? It's not so bad. They're demos mostly. They're not. People don't really care about music until it's sung by a pop star, but they're demos. Maybe someday a pop star will want to enjoy my music. I don't know, but I don't do it for fame and fortune. I do it because I enjoy the ability to create this stuff now. And now with the help of AI, I'm able to do it in a professional way that I never would have had access to before. So it's a lot of fun. But I write this music on the piano, and then I use AI tools and various other things to kind of shape it and build it into, and I write the lyrics too, and then I shape it into a sample that can be used as a demo if somebody were to want to buy the rights to the music and use it in some professional way. But I'm going to play those tonight. But they're copyright now. They're under copyright right now, and they are professionally distributed. So they're on Spotify. You can find all my music on Spotify. Just look me up. You'll see it there. Look up Bryan Ouellette as an artist. It's not under the bishop. I didn't want to put the religious aspects into this secular pursuit. So it's there, and because it's monetized, because it's under copyright, when it airs on YouTube, not during the live, but after the fact, YouTube's going to put a copyright strike on my own account, because it's going to say, oh, you're using copyright music. It's not going to cause a problem for Vestiges, but what it is going to do is they're going to slap an ad on these shows now in the archive. And when you watch it on demand later on, there's going to be an ad now, and that's going to pay me because my music was used. So don't think the church is monetizing this show. It's just, if I use my music, it's going to get monetized automatically by YouTube because I'm using what they see as copyright music, even though it's my own. But the money does go to me, so it's not like it's a complete loss. It's not like the money's just going out to YouTube. Just wanted you to be aware of that, so you might start seeing commercials on the archives only when my music is used in the show. And tonight we're gonna hear my two latest songs. I can't wait to share them with you. If you've never heard them before, it's going to be enjoyable. Let me know what you think. All right, so I also have a second announcement. Now, usually I start off with Father Chris, but tonight we have a brand new panelist, and you've met her before. She's been a guest on this show, but she is April Narad, and she is our therapist actually for the work that we do. She's one of our, you could call her our crisis counselor for the exorcism ministry, spiritual problem resolution ministry. And because Brandon, who will still probably, hopefully join us in the chat from time to time, maybe even back on the air, he has a new schedule at work. And he is no longer available on Tuesday evenings. So that means that you will not be seeing him probably for most of this season. Maybe you'll see him in the chat. I hope he's listening while he's out there, but you never know. But anyway, April, another one of our team members, is very generously agreed to spend her time with us and replacing Brandon on the panel when he's not able to be available. So let's please welcome April to the show. How you doing tonight, April?
April!
I'm doing really good, and I'll have to say, I don't know if I'm going to be very good at replacing Brandon. That's some pretty big shoes to fill.
He's a really, I mean, he's been on for several seasons, and he always has some of the most profound questions. So we have to really pick up the slack when he's not with us. So I think you'll do fine though, April. I'm not too worried about it. You have good questions too. Out of everybody that could replace or at least fill in his shoes on this panel, I mean, you'd be my first choice. So I'm very happy that you're with us.
Well, I'm excited to be here, and I'm looking forward to it. And as always, I love watching the Vestiges every season, so I'm excited.
Well, now you're a part of it. So
we got Gen Z taking, or Gen Z, oh Lord, Gen X taking over.
Yes, it is. It's taken over. And of course, joining us from Australia, we have Father Chris Yates tonight. How was your break, Father? How was your Christmas and New Year?
It was great. I was in England, so I was in England for like 5 weeks.
Wow. Okay.
So from the first week in December until the first week in January. So yeah, it was great. I was all over the place, but for Christmas itself, I was in rural Somerset on the Devon border, in a turn of the 14th, 15th century farmhouse. It was actually originally a brewery.
Sounds very haunted.
Old maltings.
Sounds very haunted.
And so I'd arranged this, and I thought this is going to be cold, freezing cold, and haunted. Okay.
Yeah.
And then when I got there, it was really warm and there was no presence of anything whatsoever.
Well, that's disappointing, isn't
Happy
it?
ghosts. happy ghosts. They were warm
like,
too.
The host was like, "Oh, it's been a really happy house," and I'm glad about that, by the way, for her sake. But it was like I was so surprised because I've been in, I think, when I was broadcasting from Glasgow, if you remember.
Yeah,
like,
you're sitting.
and that was
crazy.
100 years old. Yeah,
I think we were on the air when you started hearing some activity behind you, weren't you?
Yeah, we were.
Oh yeah, it moved the kettle.
Yeah, that's what it was.
Like literally, I heard it and saw it. Anyway, but yeah, this place was great. So it was just wonderful. Like, my whole family were there, and it was a good time. So we had a good Christmas, and then I've come back and been sort of dragged back into mainstream ministry. So I'm now a chaplain to St. John Ambulance.
Oh, okay.
So doing that as well, which is it's a good way. I mean, I've done chaplaincy before in the military and in the police, so it's
needed.
Chapter, so.
It's needed.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Gosh, yeah. And St. John's such a great organisation. Goes right back to the Crusaders, of course.
Yep.
So yeah, it's been a time of change, but I think good change. And I'm certainly feeling refreshed and ready to go.
Well, that's fantastic. And I hope you're ready to go tonight, because this is the show that we work the hardest, but I think we also have the most fun on
Well, it's midday for me, so this is great timing.
Great.
I mean, I'm rested and alert and
middle of summer or towards the end. I mean, I was reaching the end.
It's a lovely day today. It's like 83 Fahrenheit today. So it's been over 100 the last few weeks. So
my goodness!
Quite a lovely respite. Yeah.
We've been in below freezing for last couple of nights, so it's been kind of cold.
We went from 78, 80 degrees during the day just last week to like 21 this morning at my house.
Yeah, that's what gets you.
Fahrenheit.
That range.
Fahrenheit.
Yeah. I was in Melbourne one year, and it was over 110 one day. And it was sweltering. I couldn't sleep. And the following day, it was 11 Celsius, which is I don't know,
cold.
60.
Yeah.
It was ridiculous. Your body can't deal with that. Actually,
No.
sick.
It makes you sick. It does. It makes you sick both directions, whether it goes from hot to cold or cold to hot. I find that's when I tend to find my immune system wavers, a little bit. But I mean, with good supplements, it's not so bad. But, you have to really pay attention, I think. All right. Well, let's go ahead and jump right in here. So now.
Hello, April. Good to see you.
Yes.
Glad to be here.
Yes, she is with us. So, April, I saw that you did have a date on on the questions that were sent. I completely messed up on that, and I put in the questions for next week into tonight's show. So if we could use the questions from that you prepared for next week tonight, and we'll use the ones that were prepared for tonight's show next week, that would be awesome.
Fine. I'm sorry for the confusion.
No, it's not your fault. It was totally mine. I'd had a really busy and quite miserable day, and
been a little crazy.
Been a little crazy. That's an understatement. Jamie's trying to be kind, and I was not really on my best with the. I mean, I had this whole day planned out to be prepare for Vestiges tonight kind of day, and it turned into an absolute. A shit show. And so
exactly what I was just thinking. Read my mind. I was like, he's going to say shit show.
I am going to say, we don't want a shit show tonight, though. No. So I think this will work as long as you can use next week's questions tonight. I think we'll be okay. So let's get started with the first one, April.
All right. So the first question comes from Jay, and it says, I was wondering what your thoughts were on donating your body to the body farm. People donate their organs for others to live every day. So would it be any different than donating your body to science? Would that make your soul not at peace?
Okay, so this is a very metaphysical question.
Yeah.
I think the church would have somewhat of a different answer than the one I'm going to give, but
I talked about it before briefly.
We have, and I think it's important to give the metaphysical answer on this one. And the fact of the matter is, it has the potential So there's lots of questions here. So the first one is, what are my thoughts on it? Well, let's get to that in a minute. I want to get to the second part first, or the third question, which is, would that make your soul not at peace? It could. Although if the intention of the person was, this is what they wanted to do, it's possible that that would not pose a traumatic conflict in the moments immediately after death. But that's not a given, and I can't say with any certainty that it would go either way. I personally wouldn't risk it, but I understand that while, science benefits greatly from this. In fact, when I was pre-med, we had cadavers and everything else to work with. But the spiritual consequences of donating your body, and organ donation I would include in this, because that's the second question, is not worth the scientific benefits of this. It really isn't. And I know that would be a complete, people that are on the scientific spectrum would find that answer to be a completely irresponsible one to make. But the metaphysical consequences are simply just not worth it. So let's talk about one of the reasons why I feel this way and why I would share this with you. And this has to do with what my students know well, and that is the aggregate structure. Okay, we talk about the aggregate structure often. And what makes up that structure is the component of energy systems that really build the entire organism into what we would call a self or an identity. Of course, this is a construct. It's not a complete fabrication in the sense that you can't say that it doesn't exist. It's a fiction. It's not entirely a fiction. It's a construct, though. It's something that comes into being for a particular purpose and then it falls out of being. The problem with it is that the energy that makes up your identity is all part of your entire organism. We think it's like only in your brain, but it isn't. In fact, even scientifically, if you need to look at it from a completely scientific perspective, you can also understand that neurons exist all throughout the body, and even organs themselves do have neurons that can fire potential aspects of consciousness, because the consciousness goes throughout the entire nervous system. It's not just contained in the brain. I think it begins and the ends in the brain, but I don't think it's limited to that. And so some of the neurons in these organs can remember things about the life that it lived in the person that originally grew that organ, and that doesn't just go away. Okay, that's scientific reality, because there are people, and these are reports, there's even studies on this in very respectable, reputable medical journals of studies that have shown that people that have received an organ often start to change into the personality, or they blend into the personality of the person, bless you, that previously had the organ. And there's even been studies where, an organ donor's wife fell in love without even knowing that the person who received the organ of her dead husband was the recipient. And she fell in love because he had so many of the same mannerisms and characteristics that his family also reported he did not have before he took the organ.
Creepy.
So what that does is it starts to blend the metaphysical construct of an identity, which makes the ego reality more difficult to resolve, because ultimately, from a metaphysical only point of view, we have to, our biggest competitor, our biggest challenge as living beings that are striving for a type of spiritual improvement or perfection, have to contend with the limitations of the ego eventually. We have to face that. And as we further complicate the relationship to that ego by bringing in external energy or foreign energy into it, you start to add a level of complexity that, in my opinion, is just not worth the pursuit. there are going to be people that have very different opinions on this, and that's perfectly fine. I am making it very clear. Usually I will talk from an authoritative position. Tonight I am not. I am talking strictly from a personal perspective because I was asked what are my thoughts on this, and these are my thoughts on this, and they are well formulated on the basis of the metaphysical information that I know, combined with some of the medical data that also reinforces why I have a problem with it. Now, the church is a little less severe on this. However, that being said, there are concerns because sometimes people are kept alive unnaturally. Sometimes organs are harvested in unethical ways. And these can pose moral problems also for it. So I think the church is a little more liberal in the sense of how it views this, provided that the various moral complications are dealt with. I take it a little bit further and say the metaphysical consequences I cannot endorse. I would not say that that's something that you really want to have to contend with. So that's my stance on that. I mean, Father Chris, do you have an opinion on this yourself? I don't know how you would stand on it.
I think you're right about the church's position. The church liberalizes its view on what to do with our bodies when we die. And actually, I think they were wrong too. I think it will be corrected. You know, the church is a hermeneutic, so they try things out and then they reassess. It's like the scientific process comes from the church, right? You know, so
of course
the church will often allow a variation of teaching for a time and then review that. And sometimes it bears fruit and sometimes not. So it's funny because Father Firth, who's in the chat, and I were talking about this about an hour and a half ago.
Oh, really? How bizarre!
No this was
yeah, you don't get the questions, do you, ahead of time?
No. So I and I would have got the wrong ones anyway, right? So in England, you couldn't get cremated in England until the beginning of the 20th century, I think, or it might have been the very end of the 19th century. In other words, burial was the only way of dealing with people who've died. Now the church, in a sense, the state of the church mimicked one another in this. They liberalised that, and cremation was allowed, and the Church of England allowed cremation. By the way, as an aside, I think this was mainly for practical reasons because England's a small country.
Limited land to bury, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So I think that's an element of it. But it was interesting when the Church of England allowed for cremation, it specifically said, so, and I think the Catholic Church also the same, as long as there is zero spiritual connection. In other words, the cremation cannot have any religious meaning. Because obviously for Hindus, cremation does have a religious meaning.
Sure.
So it was trying to sort of halve the baby of saying we're going to allow cremation for pragmatic reasons, but we're really not changing anything about our spirituality of the body. And I think that was a mistake because I don't think you can do that. So Father Firth was talking about the fact that modern cremation techniques, unlike what goes on the River Ganges, the heat is so intense that actually atoms of yours get thrown out into space, so they go beyond this world. And that, so I think they were wrong because the scriptures say earth to earth, ashes to ashes, dust to dust. That we should be buried in the land. So I actually think what happens to human bodies is really important beyond death, and the church's liberal view then gets stretched even further. So you think, well, it's a good thing to donate my body to medical science, and perhaps there was a time where that was important. It's less important now with modeling. In other words, the research is in. We know how bodies decompose. So look, I know that scientists will say there's still value in it, and they're right. But is that value worth the metaphysical consequences? I don't think so. I mean, we believe that on the last day we will appear before Jesus Christ to be judged, and yes, of course, God's not limited to reconstruct us from wherever and whenever we may be in time and space. but I think that it's problematic to do any other than be buried in hallowed ground. I think, and when I die, I want to be buried in hallowed ground, preferably in England. But if I happen to die in Australia, then as long as they bless the earth and put me in it, then that, for me, that is what the church should teach.
Well, that's the same thing with cremation now. It's like now that they allow it, but they still require you to go through the process of Christian burial regardless. So, it's just, if you want to go through the cremation part, you still bury the ashes. You don't keep them. You don't turn them into jewelry. You don't do these ridiculous
Get
things.
Tattoos with them.
Yeah.
Happens, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But that is what happens.
Yeah.
That is, the idea of having a tattoo with ashes of a loved one. Nothing could offend the scriptures more.
Right.
And so, but look, this is we're Gen X's here. The me generation don't think like that.
No.
By the way, I'm not talking about people younger than me. I'm talking about boomers as well. Like, the sort of the consumerist generation just go, oh, it's nice, isn't it nice? And we've said before how the devil's nice. God is good. And goodness is harder than being nice.
Yes. Yeah.
Goodness means saying no, and no one likes to hear no. And if you say no to people, your YouTube channel will be less popular.
Oh, I know. No, it would. It can't get much less popular than it already is. I'm noticing that for some reason, because it's been a while since our last show, right? And I'm noticing that the software updated and the chat is not showing up on the screen. So we have that black bar down there as a place for where the chat is supposed to go, but we are not seeing it for some reason. I'm going to see if the call in.
But when somebody liked the stream, that did pop up.
That did pop up, but not the chat itself for some reason. So I don't know what's going on with that. I might have to do some more investigating, which is really hard to do when you're on the air. One of the reasons why this show really needs an engineer. Oh, there it is. Now it's working. Okay, I think I fixed it.
Yeah, several people said they see it.
Okay, so it's coming up now. All right, this is fantastic. Okay, all right, we're back on track. All right, that's the answer to that question. April, what's the next one?
So the next question comes from Andrew, and he says, you teach in your webinar that the basic problem with tattoos is that you're inscribing non-reversible archetypal imagery onto your very body. Does the same issue apply to wearing a t-shirt with an infinity sign and I don't know how to say the name of this sign.
Ankh.
Or having a picture of that hanging on your wall?
This is a good question because it kind of relates to the last one in a weird kind of twisted way. But it does. It actually does apply the same way, but the difference is it's insignificant because you can take off a shirt. It's not inscribed into actual living tissue and it doesn't shed blood. So the sacrificial element is not present in that type of symbology. So to use a church example, vestments are used in this very context. We put on, priests and bishops put on the vestments, not to be like, hey, look at me, I'm so important, or not to like show off to the congregation so that everyone knows who the head guy is. That is there because we are clothing ourselves archetypally in Christ. This is to bring in persona Christi to the forefront of consciousness during these pivotal moments in the Christian life, which the Mass is the singular most important one. So that's where vestments would be used. But as soon as those vestments are taken off, the archetype goes with the vestment. It doesn't stay. A priest could still operate in persona Christi without the vestments on. This is true, but it doesn't have the same archetypal impact on the circumstances, which is why it would be inappropriate for a priest or a bishop to offer the Mass without the chasuble, without but even in other sacraments, we almost always wear the stole, which is kind of one of the part of the vestments too. It's also part of that taking on that archetype. But unlike a tattoo, it's not carved into us. We can take that off. And so the archetypal interference from such a thing doesn't affect us the same way. But I will tell people all the time, they think that, oh, well, if tattoos are dangerous, I'll just get one of Jesus. That's one of the worst ones you could put on you. Because, I mean, honestly, are you really prepared to take on all of the sacrificial information that is contained within that one thing? And I'll tell you, the people that I know that have gotten a Jesus tattoo, usually if they do the crucifix across their chest, that's one of the big ones. Or their back. They become very unstable. And they don't know why. And of course, a lot of people that are really pro tattoo, think I'm being ridiculous with this, but I'm not.
No, you're not.
And you have tattoos, and you have them from the military.
9 tattoos.
And you've done these, of course, for more connection to your Native American.
They're Native American
heritage.
totems for protection.
Yeah. But do you find that there was a metaphysical change upon receiving them, that now it's part of you, right? It's not something you can just take off.
It's definitely part of me.
Yeah.
Especially on my arm under here. It says warrior in Cherokee.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much what I did my whole adult life.
Yeah.
So I ended up, I got that when I was still in the military.
Yeah.
Before I knew I was going to be a cop.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But it's been a positive thing for me.
Well, I mean, it can be, and I'm not, and I think that's the other side of the coin, is that just because there is an archetypal risk here, doesn't mean it can't have its benefits. I mean, remember though what tattoos are. These come from tribal societies.
They're sigils.
And they are sigils based within the shamanic system. They were never done for adornment. Tribal societies do not tattoo their members for adornment reasons, or even just because, this is a cool thing that you want to remember, like a memorial or something, or to mark a special occasion. It is done strictly to take on the energy of the symbol that is being inscribed. And because it sheds blood, there's an actual blood sacrifice, which in shamanism is extremely important. Also important, by the way, in Judaism and Christianity, hence why we have sacrifice in those religions too, for exactly the same reasons, by the way. But again, as a Christian, it becomes more problematic, because then you're looking at it and say, well, Jesus is the sacrifice that ends all sacrifice. It's an unbloody sacrifice in the Eucharist that continues on the final bloody sacrifice at the cross. Do we really need any more bloody sacrifices? No, we don't. So it is, again, one of these metaphysically complicated things. But the question wasn't so much about whether or not tattoos are permitted. It's more about, would the same effect apply by wearing a T-shirt with that symbol? And the answer is that, yes, it would have the same effect, but no, it wouldn't have the same permanent consequences. So it's pretty safe to wear a T-shirt, as long as you're not letting it keeping it on all the time. You don't want to do that.
Just you mentioned the vestments, and again, I think this is a liberalization that has been a mistake. I mean, within the church, because vestments, certainly chasubles, stoles, maniples. Well, I still wear a maniple, but listen to the story. They used to have to be consecrated by a bishop.
Yeah.
So, because the idea is that the vestment itself should be consecrated.
It's a sacred object. Yeah.
It's a sacred object, and also as a form of protection and all the rest of it. So now I do have mine consecrated because I'm concerned about things like that. But also when we put them on, there's a prayer that goes with them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so now that prayer, on the one hand, psychologically, I'm sure April could tell us about that. It psychologically helps to prepare you. That's why the maniple should never have fallen out of favor, because the prayer is so lovely. Let me so bear the maniple of tears, And so so it's important from a psychological point of view, but it is also important from a metaphysical point of view. Because you're maintaining, yes, they've been consecrated, but actually, as I put this on, I'm reminding myself of that spiritual significance of this item. So I think psychologically, it helps you not confuse yourself with Christ, which is very important.
Yeah.
But metaphysically, allows you to be used by Christ for the purpose for which you've been ordained.
To take on the actual embodiment of that responsibility for the purposes of ministry.
To give him our bodies.
Yeah,
and the chasuble of the Mass is so important because it covers our whole body. So, you can say, yes, okay, the stole the authority to act in persona Christi, the maniple, the reminder that, that it comes with tears. And it's a form of, it's a handcuff, right? It's like a chain.
Yeah.
But the chasuble, which of course is the symbol of charity, is a reminder that our whole selves are covered in that love. So our authority is covered in charity. We don't lord it over people as the pagans do, as Jesus said. So it is psychological, but it's more than that. It's a metaphysical, metaphysically important process.
I think so, and I think it's also important to remember that, even though shamanic traditions might not be important to people that go and get tattoos, they have to understand, though, that they did absolutely. It's a type of appropriation, isn't it? Where you're taking something on and you're secularizing it. You're making it less sacred because you're turning it into a piece of bodily jewelry or some kind of like makeup that never can come off. When it's not about that, it's not about looking cool. And it's not about, memorializing occasions like, oh, I went on a cruise. I'm going to go get a tattoo, or I went to Vegas. Let me get a tattoo to remember this by, or I fell in love. Let me go and get my girlfriend's whatever. Yeah, no, not a good idea. Because again, you're missing the whole point of what they are. They're sacred. They're sacred to the culture that developed them. So now let's talk about this question here from Laura, who asks, what is the origin of the Ankh? Because the question included this. I'm going to bring this up before we get to our...
Yep.
Yes, it is Egyptian. It's the Egyptian key of life is what it was. It's actually referenced in the sense that you were not even permitted to enter into the temple, the ancient Egyptian temples that would lead us to their own version of eternal life, without it, because it represented access to eternity. It represented access to immortality. Interestingly enough, there are some Gnostic traditions that suggest that, at least at the archetypal level, obviously it wasn't done at a conscious level, because the cross in Christianity is not an imitation of the Egyptian Ankh, which ironically means the same thing. But also, it was a reflection of the way Jesus was executed. It was a Roman execution system. But isn't it interesting that the Romans chose to execute this way, and that Jesus was indeed executed in the very fashion of the same symbol that is representative of the access to eternity, access to immortality, access to eternal life. This is very, very archetypally relevant, I think. And also, speaking of shamanic cultures, the crossroads is also a meeting point between heaven and earth. So crosses represent that. The vertical line is access to heaven. The horizontal line is the earth, right? The horizon line of the earth. Mm-hmm. And then the vertical is to rise up towards heaven. So it cross represents literally man becoming God, God becoming man, which is the fundamentals of Eastern Christian thought. So there's a lot archetypally going on in the cross.
And sacrifice in time being eternal, an eternal sacrifice at that still point.
Exactly. And isn't it interesting that historically this was the execution instrument, and it was almost as if it was preordained, isn't it? Right? Oh, we know it was, but the Romans didn't know that this was what they were doing, and yet this is what they were doing. This is the fascinating thing that comes with archetypes. This is why we spend so much time talking about
the Ankh. I just looked it up real quick.
Yeah.
Most of us know it's Egyptian, but it's been dated going back as far as 3150 BCE.
Yeah.
So
long time before Christianity.
Long time before Christianity.
And before the Romans were using crucifixion as an execution.
Yeah.
They weren't doing that at that time period.
Before the Romans.
Yeah, before the Romans, way before.
Yeah.
So, it's possible the Romans did conquer Egypt. It's possible that they would have maybe thought about that. I don't think so, though. I really don't. I don't think it was that like an affront or some kind of insult to be like, oh, let's take the symbol of eternal life and let's kill people on it. I really don't think they were thinking that. It was just a convenient way, I think, to make a show of it. They wanted you to see what would happen if you went against the authority. And so crucifixion was a painful agonizing death. It took a long time to die, and it made sure everyone saw it, so that you would see this, you were on display. This is what happens to you when you go against Rome. You know, it was more about that, but had this internal archetype that also was also associated with it, which I think is that's divine.
Historically, didn't they actually use an X? And then
there were
some interpretation, it turned into what we know as the cross.
No, well, I mean, not all of them was like perfect crosses, right? But what they would typically would do is that you would carry the horizontal beam, and then they would attach it to the pole that would hang you up. Okay, so I mean that's where the cross comes from. They didn't really like when you see some of the art of the Via Dolorosa, Jesus doing. He's carrying a perfect cross.
The whole cross.
Yeah, it's not probably not historically accurate. That's more artistic choice, but yeah, there were executions that were done on a cross, and one of the apostles was killed that way.
Yes.
Well, it's like people get fixated. Oh, it was a T-shaped cross like the Franciscan one. It's like, well, it was just however the Roman nailed the damn thing to the pole and hoisted it in the air.
Yeah, that's true.
Like
several methods.
There was no aesthetic to it.
Yeah, there really wasn't.
It was pragmatic. It's like saying, you know, what was the hangman's rope like? It was the rope he had.
It was itchy.
Yeah. That's true. Well, that's the hangman's rope. Probably not as archetypal as the cross, though. I'll tell you that. All right.
Different sort of archetype.
Different sort, yeah. Not a good one. Okay, what's our next question, April?
So the next question comes from Abel, and it says, is it a sin to use contraceptives such as Plan B? And then he goes on to say, I think I've heard the Catholic Church say life begins at conception, but what about someone taking the pill immediately after?
Okay, this is a really important one. This is a moral question. This is, of course, a Christian a question of theology. Okay, so yes, the Church does indeed teach that life begins at conception, which would mean that anything that would interfere with the development of that life, that zygote, would be considered to be a murder, an abortion. So yes, Plan B is largely perceived to be potentially an abortion pill. It doesn't mean it in all cases, but because it has the capacity to do that, it is prohibited. Now, is it a sin? Depends. Well, it is a sin, yes, but the severity of that sin depends upon whether or not you fully knew that this is what it was and that you consented to it anyway. That's one of the bases.
Probably there's another sin that goes before it.
Well, there probably is. I think what he's asking is this like mortal sin. And I mean, it really is a mortal sin, but for mortal sin to actually be mortal sin, there has to be three major components. Okay, it has to be, first of all, grave matter, which this is. So the Church would classify this as a grave matter. Secondly, you have to be fully aware that it's a grave matter. And then, and thirdly, you have to fully consent to it anyway. In other words, you're like, I know it's a grave matter. I don't care. I'm going to do it anyway. That's when it becomes mortal sin. So the person who asked this was concerned about this because it was something that is involved in his life at some point, but he was not aware that the Church had this position on Plan B at the time, which would very much lessen any culpability on the part of the person that participated in this, because and it could be lowered all the way to the level of venial sin as far as Catholic theology is concerned, because you have to really be fully aware that this is a grave matter and that it is indeed sinful. So the sinfulness of this really depends a lot upon the knowledge and consent of the individual, and only really you could answer that with a confessor. And so that's why I advise this particular querent to be good. This is a good one to go to your confessor with during Lent and sort this out in the confessional, because you might be able to find some peace with it that way versus agonizing over, oh my God, did I commit a mortal sin? Well, if you have to ask that, you probably didn't. If you don't know it's a mortal sin, then you probably already have no longer met the criteria for committing it. So that's the good news.
But it is also a sin to remain in ignorance.
Well, that's true. That is true. Yeah, I mean but that becomes harder to measure.
To grow and deepen our faith and understanding, and that's what urges us to have higher standards, right?
Yeah.
So. And that is a good thing to do.
Yeah.
But the higher standards, like in other words, the more you're on the way of Jesus, that's why it should be much more difficult for you to judge other people, because being on that path towards perfection helps you realize how not perfect you are, and that helps you not to condemn other people.
It does, and I think that's really the most important part. Yeah, I mean that's the most important part to understand about confession. I know people are terrified of it because I think they think they're going to be judged for what they've done and what they confess, and that's not what happens during confession. At least it's not what should happen.
It's the demons that I mean, the devil wants to keep you out of the confessional. Yeah. So just bear that in mind.
Yeah. I think that's a good way to put it. And so that becomes a part. Remember, reconciliation is about healing. It's not about being judged. It's about liberating yourself from judgment. I mean, it's the complete opposite of judgment. The last thing you should be afraid of is the confessional, and it's one of the most wonderful resources, even from a psychological, emotional point of view. You can even throw the spiritual side away for a minute and just look at just the spiritual and emotional benefits to it. They are numerous. And I advocate to people that are skeptical on that basis alone, because you know why? The spiritual benefits become evident once you've gone through it.
You just have to do it.
You do.
And I've just encouraged it. I've heard a lot of confessions in my life, and I've made a few too, a lot. Just encourage anybody. You'll only be welcomed with love. Mm-hmm. It's just as simple as that. Even by a grouchy priest.
Now, I want to make very, very clear that not everybody is going to have that same experience. In fact, a person came to me recently and went to tried to go do the right thing for Lent and go to confession, and they had a bad experience. Oh. Okay, because the confessor actually handled himself extremely inappropriately, not in a sexual way or anything, but inappropriate for the sacrament, and basically gave this person an error, told them something that was absolutely an error against the teachings of the church and canon law. So understand. Okay, just because you might have a bad experience with a confessor, don't generalize that to the entire sacrament. There are good priests out there, there are bad priests out there.
And there is a remedy to that. So, if a confessor says, this is wrong, here's your penance, and you think, and you go and you think, I'm not sure that is right, you can go to another confessor and explain the circumstances, and they can decide from there.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So I always encourage people to go and I would strongly encourage people to go and find another confessor if you find one that isn't all that great. All right, so we're now
impose a horrible penance. You can get that changed by another priest.
You can absolutely, absolutely can. Okay, so we are almost at the top of the hour, and I want to start this one off real quick with just talking about the musical piece that we're going to hear here. So this is my newest song. It's called "Walking Out," and I usually write music that comes to me I'm not a musician. I'm really not. I have a musical inclination, but I am not what I would classify as a musician. I've never taken lessons. I've spent almost my entire life without playing an instrument. But I had an experience that I shared on this show once about metaphysical kind of spiritual experience that led to my being able to play the piano in a unique and special way on occasion. And I tried to cultivate that by buying a keyboard, a really good one, a few years back, and to see if I could find that ability again. And every now and then I get a little window into this and something comes to me and I'm able to go down there and try to find it. Do I ever play at the same level that I did that one time I had that experience? No. But am I able to actually create music that that at least inside my head sounds fantastic? Absolutely. And I can put it on the piano, and then I use various tools on my computer to bring it to life and make it sound like, what I want it to sound like. And a lot of the music I write is Broadway style. I have these Broadway concepts always floating around in my head. So a lot of the music I write is Broadway songs. But every now and then I'll get a different kind of inclination. So they don't necessarily mean anything personally to me. They're just music that that comes to me about different archetypal thoughts, that experiences that we all as human beings have or share in some capacity. Love and loss and forgiveness and vindication. These are universal concepts, and I write music about that. Well, this song was my recent one. It came to me very quickly, and I wrote the whole thing literally in just one evening. And it is called Walking Out. And I think this one came to me because this is one of the rare songs that is actually personal. This is one of the rare songs where I am probably inside me, the person that is speaking these words in this particular piece. If you've ever suffered at the mercy of another, if you've ever been marginalized or put into a position where people act as though you're there to serve at their pleasure instead of, finding your own place in the world and building your own, sense of authority and people respecting you for what you've done. If you've ever been disrespected on the basis that people act as though you're there to serve them, then this song, I think, will relate to you. I'm not speaking from necessarily my priesthood here. This is more of a personal thing with people I have known in my life that have wronged me in very deep and traumatic ways. And sometimes it's very therapeutic to write music about it, because you know what? It gets it out of here and it puts it out there, and then it no longer eats you alive in here. And that's why I write this stuff.
Kind of like confession. Get it off your chest.
It's kind of like confession, yeah. So this is my song to take us to the break, Walking Out. Enjoy it, please.
Deceptions all around. I've given so much of myself, yet never hear back a sound. I've trusted even when I knew I was never offered chances. Everything that I've given reduced to hollow answers. I traded who I was for who they needed me to be. I buried every honest part they never let live free. I stood inside these expectations, tried for what they could see, but every step taken for them was one step further away from me. piece I gave away. They only saw compliance when I slowly lost my way. I was reaching for a truth they never wanted me to have. Standing in spaces already haunted by every doubt they ever had. But now I'm breaking free from everything that held me down. I'm done screaming, never hearing back a sound. I gave my faith to voices that were never on my side. Now I'm walking out on everything with nothing left to hide. I can feel in this space something stronger than regret. Every chain is coming loose. Every fear has lost its threat. They don't know what lives in me. They don't know my destiny. All that silence disappears. Now I finally lost all fears. I'm breaking free from everything that held me down. I'm done screaming, never hearing back a sound. I gave my faith to voices that were never on my side. Now I'm walking out on everything with nothing left to hide. All the weight they put on my head is falling to the ground. I was truly lost, but now I'm finally found.
Welcome back, everyone, to the second hour of Vestiges After Dark. We're going to start now taking your questions. I hope you've been asking them in the chat. I haven't been watching the chat too closely, but please start logging your questions all across the internet. Moderators and panel members, please make sure you're checking Instagram, TikTok, anywhere there might be. I'll be doing the same as well between conversations, just to see if we can find anything that is of interest. And if you have a question that you really want to talk to us about, why don't you call into the show at 207-544-1983. That's 207-544-1983, and we'll take you on the air. Yeah, that's what's coming up here. Don't go away. I also want to give a shout out to our top countries that listen on demand, mostly through the podcast audio only version of the show, because that's where most people actually listen to this show. It's not really the video version, believe it or not. It's actually the audio only version for podcasting. I guess maybe people are driving around and they're listening in their cars. It's a good show to do that too, I think. But our top countries, other than the United States, is India, Australia, and the UK. Those are our top locations. Of course, it makes sense. They're English-speaking countries largely, a lot of English speakers there. But we also have some interesting locations too. Occasionally, we'll see Japan get a whole bunch of hits from Japan. So that's always fascinating. So we want to just say, even though you can't join us live, we are appreciative of you tuning into this show and downloading it or listening to it on whatever your preferred platform is. We are all over the internet. You pick a podcasting service, I guarantee you'll find Vestiges After Dark on it. I'm pretty sure I'm listed on all of them. And, of course, we're live across the internet on right now on Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, Twitch, and did I say Instagram? I can't remember. Facebook.
IG.
We're all over the place. So if you have a question, you can log it into the chat that you're watching. You don't have to come to YouTube, although we'd love to have you over here at YouTube. You don't have to. We're checking all of them. Okay, so April, usually Brandon's job is to keep an eye on as much as he can. I know it's a little bit taxing, but have you seen any questions of interest so far?
Got one.
Actually, so I know that me and Jamie both caught one right there before the break, but there was one earlier and I missed part of it. Maybe one of the other panelists caught it. It was someone when you were talking about the organ transplanting, about if someone has a transplant, then they take, and I missed the end of it, something with them. So I don't know if anybody else caught the last part of that question.
Did you see it, Father Chris, by chance?
I didn't see that.
No, I didn't. I'm looking now.
I'll look for it if you want to go ahead with the next one.
Let's do the next one. We'll come back to this I'll do my best to try to answer it even without that information. I'm pretty sure I can figure it out. But what's the other question that we have so far?
So the other question is, someone asked, is magic like the Force in Star Wars? There is a light side and a dark side, but it's all variants up on the one and only Force.
I would say that what magic is, like in the occult sense, if we're talking about like low magic, which would be witchcraft, or high ceremonial magic, like what you would see in some of the examples from the Golden Dawn, or some of these more ceremonial type of of systems that are high liturgical, magical operations. I would say that they all derive ultimately from the ability of the human being to connect with the creative principle of the cosmos. So if you want to actually say that it's a force, if you want to give it like a sort of like a Star Wars sort of mysticism to it, you could say that the force is literally the creative and reabsorption principles of the universe, okay? Which is the cosmic structure of the universe. Things come into being, things fall out of being. There is creation, there is destruction. There is yin and yang, the passive, the active, the aggressive, the peaceful, okay? Male and female. All of these polarities can manifest through the intent of the human being as dualities. And that's when it becomes morally specific as good or bad. Okay? Because good and bad are not true polarities. They are, goodness is all there really is in reality, in actual creation, and evil or being bad is the absence of that natural good. It's creating a vacuum where there should not be one. So evil's not really a thing. It's not really an existent thing. It's the absence of an existent thing that creates the problem. It creates a deficit. There is only abundance. But as soon as you take abundance away artificially, you create an artificial deficit. And that creates our experience of evil. So there isn't like in Star Wars where there's like, Star Wars is very Zoroastrian, isn't it? I mean, it's like the force can be used for good, can be used for evil. And that there's like various entities that sort of have an alignment, almost in like Dungeons and Dragons kind of an alignment kind of characteristic that allows them to be able to exercise one feature or the other. That's not the way it really is. So even in magic, okay, even though from a theological point of view, a Christian should not be engaging in occult practices like witchcraft and magic, if one were to do so, it can be used for the creative purposes of maybe generating prosperity or, protecting someone. You could definitely do rituals for that and they would work if you did them right. But you could also remove their protection. You can't really cause evil. Like a curse is not sending evil to someone. A curse is removing what protects them through vulnerability. So a person that is very skilled at casting curses, like a black magician, perhaps, a witch that dabbles with the dark side of things. And I use that again, not in the force sense, but in just the psychological sense. What they would be doing when they issue a curse is they wouldn't be sending evil at them. There's nothing evil to send. What you would do is you would remove their access to the good. And that's what creates the experience of evil. So experientially, it feels like there's two forces. And we, as Christians, think that too. We act as though sometimes there are Christians that think the devil's more powerful than God the way they act. They really do. But that's not the way it really is. What we call the devil is really just the absence of everything that is good. And he's the embodiment. The devil's the embodiment of that absence, that deficit, the embodiment of that deficit, the personification of that deficit. And but the deficit's not a real thing. Participation in it is real, but the deficit itself's not real, because there is ultimately in God's creation only abundance. We've subtracted from it. God's working to restore that. Our participation in salvation helps to do that. But magic is sort of I wouldn't even say it's neutral. I would say it either cultivates the creative principle or it exploits the reabsorption principle. And that can be very destructive. But you don't need magic to do that. Just human behavior does that every day. We can be constructive people. We can go out there and help people, be charitable. find people in need and assist them and making a better life for themselves, or we can tear people down by insulting them and treating them in marginal ways, or taking away their opportunities to do well in life. I mean, this happens every single day. There's no magic involved in that, but that's the same thing. It's the same principle at work. It's the same exploitation. So in a way, I would say it's just as bad as putting a curse on someone. Look, I don't like a lot of corporate culture, because it kind of rewards stepping on your grandmother's face to get ahead if necessary. And there's a lot of people in the corporate world that feel that that's perfectly acceptable in that kind of competitive environment. Maybe it is, but I disagree that it's not morally acceptable, because ultimately we are still responsible for looking out for others, not at the expense of them. Our success should not come at the expense of anyone. It should always be to build everyone up, and I don't think that we as human beings always think like that, but don't think for a moment that that's not a curse. It is a curse. Oh yeah, you didn't go and conjure some demon to go and harass someone. But you might as well have, because instead of the demon, you did it yourself. That's the real moral conundrum, isn't it? And we should always be better than that. Christian or otherwise, we should be better than that. We should always be looking to find ways to build people up, not tear them down. Sometimes you have to give them a firm talking to. Sometimes you have to be strict, but that doesn't mean you have a right to be cruel. Cruelty is inexcusable in all circumstances, towards people, towards animal, towards anybody, to anything. Father Chris, anything you want to add to the idea of magic, the Force?
Well, I mean, not really.
Is your lightsaber blue or red? Let's just get it out there.
Mine's blue.
I think he wields a purple one. I think his is purple. I think his is purple.
I'm a blue.
Purple or green.
Oh, you're green. Okay.
Yeah. I did have one as a child. I think it was green.
Oh, okay. There you go.
But I was going to say that was original 80s stuff, right? Anyway,
Oh yeah.
I wish I'd kept
Expandable one used
worth
to.
a fortune.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was just going to say that this is it's quite. You touched on it. It's a really key aspect. Is that evil in this world with fallen humanity? Evil is the absence of goodness. So evil is an absence. It's not a presence. And so it is. All we can do is try and mitigate the degradation of goodness within us. So what that tells us that even the worst serial killer, psychopath that ever existed on the face of the earth, and you can all decide who that is for yourselves, is only alive and able to act because there's goodness in them. The fact that goodness has been utterly reduced and ignored in their actions and in their thoughts doesn't mean that there's a presence of evil. It just means that their goodness has been utterly neglected and become a sort of shell of what it ought to be. So
technically, that's the definition of a fallen angel right there.
Yes, that's right. And so now this should give us hope for people, not in some false compassion way of saying, oh, poor thing, just because you murdered loads of people, let's not put you in jail. No, we do also believe in justice and consequences and all the rest of it. But simultaneously, it tells us that we should never presume that somebody is beyond salvation. And what it means to condemn somebody is to fool yourself that they are beyond salvation, and it's not your call. So even though there's people who I really do not like very much in this life, I even the person I dislike the most in this world, I could never say they're beyond redemption. I could never say that God couldn't forgive them. I could never say that they couldn't find their way to heaven, because my judgment of them is imperfect. God's is perfect. And God does not condemn anybody. But it's why it's important to cultivate, even if you don't want to think about this as a Christian, to cultivate the virtues. The sort of Platonic approach to life of we actually all know what makes us I'm going to be deliberately grammatically incorrect. What makes us gooder, because actually, what makes us more virtuous? The reason I didn't want to say more virtuous is because virtue has been wrecked in the last 10 years. The people think it's virtuous as long as you stick a sticker up, whatever. Everyone's welcome in my house,
the whole virtue signaling.
Anything for anybody.
Yeah, virtue has become sort of a bad word now. I mean, it's been appropriated. It's been appropriated.
Whereas actually, to inculcate goodness in others and in yourself is you can't do that through signaling. You can only do that through action, through doing stuff.
Yeah. I like that,
and that's important.
I like that. It is important, and I think it's something that we have to really think about. The sender said something kind of interesting just now. He says he likes how Bishop Bryan is libertarian leaning, but not an apologist for corporate culture. It's enough to make me reconsider libertarianism.
Come on over. We have cookies.
The beautiful thing about libertarianism is that it isn't one set thing. Now, are there libertarians that I absolutely disagree with through and through? Absolutely. And I think that's the beauty of it, is that it isn't a cookie cutter position. I don't even consider it an ideology, because it really doesn't lend itself to being one. It tries to avoid that kind of limitation. And
it's why you can't have a libertarian party. I mean, I know they exist.
Yeah.
But they don't really. I mean, they can't cohere.
No,
because
you can't get anybody to agree.
I lean libertarian.
Yeah,
but I am a Disraelian conservative, right? For people who know who Benjamin Disraeli was, if you don't know, look him up, because he was probably the best prime minister Britain ever had. But anyway, I'm Burkean Disraelian conservative. What that means is that I think the government, where the libertarian in me says it shouldn't be down to the government to enforce virtues in you.
Right.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Absolutely.
But you should want to cultivate virtues in yourself and other institutions that are not the government, in other words, that don't hold a gun to your head at the end of the day, are really important, like the church. Like charitable organizations, like other groups that support the Rotary clubs and the things that support the things that are good for you and good for your community. Those institutions are really, really important. That part of me is conservative. The libertarian part is to say, but it shouldn't be the government doing those things.
Right.
Because it leads to basically inertia, where people go, oh, when are the government going to come and clear the snow from my driveway? It's like,
well, the government can't do anything.
How about get a shovel out, do it yourself?
I mean, the problem with government is it just doesn't do anything effectively. It's always done in whatever it attempts to do. It always results in a shit show again. Right? It's another shit show. So I don't find that that's ever the solution to anything. Now, that doesn't mean that just because I'm a libertarian I really should qualify that. I think actually the individual who posted a sender, I believe leaning. Yeah. I think that's a good way to put me, because I don't consider myself a libertarian as much as I am libertarian inclined. I would not advocate for no regulation, like giving corporate America free reign to do whatever the hell it wants, because it won't act responsibly. It won't. And if you give it power, then what happens is you create plutocracy, which is what we have now in America. If you think you have a democracy, you've never known democracy. What you have is, you don't even have a republic. Okay, that's just the polite term for plutocrat. A plutocratic corporatocracy is what this is. And that creates elitism, and it creates unnecessary disparity. I mean, there's necessary disparities. And what I mean by that is, I also believe in meritocracy within limits. I do believe that when you do hard work should be rewarded. Laziness Should not. I do think someone that works harder should have more than someone that doesn't. I think that's fair. I think that's the way, the universe works. So I don't think that we should just give free entitlements away, just on the basis of the fact that people exist. I think you have to be a contributor, but you have to want to be, but you also have to provide a system that encourages participation instead of exclusivity and elitism, which makes people feel left out. And then that just creates rebellion. And that makes people sometimes feel lazy, because what they do is they're like, well, what's the point? Why try hard? I'm never going to get ahead anyway. Yeah. So there's balance, and certainly unregulated markets are dangerous. Someone has to regulate them. I don't think they can be self-regulating because there's too much greed, but I don't think necessarily the government's the place to enforce it. I strongly advocate for another kind of division of nonprofit, privately operated systems of checks and balances. I really do. Not government checks and balances, private checks and balances. And nobody's really wants that.
That is why that was traditionally the role of the churches.
It was.
But,
you're right.
Milton Friedman said something really important. He said lots of very important things, but if we're going to go down the sort of libertarian route, he said that people talk about capitalism as though it's a system of profit, and he said no, it's a system of profit and losses. And the losses are just as important, if not more, than the profits, because the losses tell you what doesn't work, right?
Yeah.
And so, what people, and you talk about plutocracy, what people are really arguing against, and I would join them. I think it's wrong to be a Marxist. I think that's
oh yeah, I mean that's but not a solution.
But it's fair enough when people are saying, "Oh, capitalism doesn't work," they are talking about crony capitalism.
Well, because we don't have capitalism.
No,
capitalism doesn't
that's
exist.
Not a free market.
Yeah.
yeah. Well, you want the markets to be as free as possible, just as you want the people to be as free as possible. But where, like you, I'm not a complete libertarian. I'm not an anarchist. And there's a difference between being a libertarian and being a libertine.
Yeah.
Libertarianism requires maturity and a moral, virtuous purpose in your life. So the best circumstances under which the most libertarian you can be are in and this is my opinion, that is within the context of the church, because then what is restricting you is not the government, and not the church's theocracy either, by the way. No, the church has, this is the guide, these are the principles, this is what we encourage, but your life is yours to freely live. But there is moral judgment within that.
And see, that's you're right. So, that's what's missing, because you're right. And I'm glad you made the distinction about theocracy, because I think when people hear, oh, the church should regulate, or that's not at all what's being said here. We do,
legally regulate.
Not legally. No, it's about, like, for example, let me give you a very libertarian position of mine. We had a question. I mean, Father Chris might even disagree with this position, but we're going to go there. We had a question earlier in the first hour about the Plan B, right? The pill, that you can take, as a last resort, kind of thing to prevent pregnancy after the fact, and we talked about the moral problem of that. Okay. I am absolutely 100% as a Christian, as a free citizen, 100% against abortion. I am anti-abortion completely. However, I am pro-choice. Why? Because I don't believe in theocracy. That's the only reason. Okay. Pro-choice is not, I'm all for abortion. They've turned it into that. That's not what it means. They have. That's not what it means. Even the church will make it seem like that's what that means. It's not what that means. Pro-choice means is that you have the right to make morally reprehensible decisions. But the church, but the government doesn't have a right to stop you from making a morally reprehensible decision. Now, where that becomes complicated,
people to commit murder.
Well, that's where it comes in. But then again, the problem is it has never been ruled as murder legally, only morally.
No, I know.
And that's where you can't, again, you need theocracy to call it murder. And until the Supreme Court, which I don't think it ever will declare that it is murder, at least in this country, then we really can't hold to that standard except morally, which means that we have to give people the freedom to do that, even if we find it reprehensible. And I would do everything within my power. But the real thing that I would say,
which includes stigmatizing. There's nothing wrong with stigmatizing.
Well, that's where I'm going. You're way ahead of me.
I'm from England, and in England, 1 in 3 pregnancies today ends in abortion.
Yeah.
1 in 3.
Yeah.
And they say, "Oh, we've got a birth rate problem." No, we don't.
No,
We've got an abortion problem.
Abortion problem. Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with saying that, advertising the fact that is morally reprehensible. We should say that. Now,
Well,
that's not the same thing as saying let's go and arrest these. Of course not. But it is okay to say this is a very, very bad circumstance.
But just
And not only is it
like
bad for that individual, but for the culture as well.
But just like the government should not, enforce regulations on people's freedom, and that would not be the right way to go.
No.
We cannot have a government that regulates morality in people. And ultimately, this is still a moral decision, because I think you could say, and I think this is probably where
want the government to, because that would then become, which is what's happening in Australia, by the way.
Yes.
With hate speech laws and all the rest
Exactly.
of it. Essentially, the government has created its own religion and its own blasphemy laws. It's godless, of course, but and this is what is very undesirable. That's why what we want is as light, the libertarian, as light a touch as possible from the law on moral issues. But the churches and the synagogues and the should be the ones pushing to say this is the moral.
this is the
line.
boundary.
This
Yes.
is-
Yeah. And that's what's missing,
but
because
it doesn't come with a police officer.
no, it doesn't. And it's still a free choice. It's just the church instructs, and then the person has to make the best moral decision. Presumably they care enough to do so. But when you get into enforcement, that's when it becomes problematic. And while, the church can call it murder, consider it murder, it's still a moral judgment until it's become, because murder is a legal term. I mean, well, let's put it this way. Maybe you could say murder is a theological term in some circumstances, but homicide is not. And abortion is not homicide. And that's the problem, is that until it is, you can't enforce it politically. You can only enforce it morally.
In America, the real question is whether the inalienable rights that your Declaration of Independence has
Extends to an unborn.
Extends to conception. As soon as that extends to conception, then that's that. At the moment, it doesn't. And at the moment, you have this weird kind of fiction that when a baby's in the birth canal, it doesn't have any rights, and as soon as it's born, it has all the rights. It's just kind of a strange thing.
Well, there's a couple strange things to that. Like, number one, if you murder a pregnant woman, you can be charged with a double homicide.
Yeah.
Correct.
So that's kind of hypocritical. And
but this is the issue where the law gets involved.
And then, but
So have you guys heard in Tennessee that they're getting ready to pass a law about if a woman commits an abortion, they're going to be charged with murder, or not murder, but they're going to be the death penalty.
That will never get.
Is that a bill that they're trying to move forward?
I've not heard. We have not heard that. No.
Trying to move forward with that.
That's not going to happen.
Politicians do stuff like this.
Yeah,
to feed their base.
They throw the worst thing at the wall just to see what'll stick.
So let's stop killing someone by killing someone. That makes a lot of sense. I mean, come on. You see, this is what happens when you get government involved, April. See, this is what happens when you get government involved.
It's a stunt. It'll go nowhere. It's ridiculous.
It's absolutely a stunt.
I mean,
by the way, I don't know any pro-life people, including the most prominent ones like Ben Shapiro. None of them would support that.
I mean, how can you? That's ridiculous. No, it's ridiculous. But again, it becomes a political
There's lots of ridiculous people in politics.
Well,
Quite a few.
Yeah, it just becomes a talking point for for politicians to create more divisive patterns of thinking that create controversies and whatnot. And of course, people get behind it because they love this stuff. Here in Georgia, we've been trying to get a casino, for I don't know how long. We've even got the space ready for it. A very simple thing, right? Almost every state has a casino now, and Georgia's one of the few that doesn't. It doesn't even have online gambling or even a sports book or the ability to legally bet on sports. It's one of the few places left in this country where you can't do that legally. And then even if you were to use an offshore online casino, which may or may not be safe because it's not really regulated by any reasonable authority, you're in a gray area. It could be illegal, might not be. No one knows. Probably not enforceable, but still, are you going to even get your money if you win? That's the problem with it. So we've been trying to get this, but there's this, I forget what they're called. It's a Baptist organization. It's basically a special interest group that's run by the Baptist Church here in Georgia that has so much power that they shoot this down every single time it comes up. My problem with it is, what business is it of yours if somebody decides that they want to go to casino? Don't go there.
It's no one's business.
Don't go there. Okay, and even if you want to argue that, okay, casinos bring in crime and criminals and everything else, okay, fine. But what's your excuse for the online ones or the sports books? Give me a break. It's not your job to regulate the morality of people through the law. You can teach your people this. By all means, the Baptist Church, if they have a moral problem with gambling, go ahead and teach your people not to gamble. I don't have a problem with that. That's your free choice. My problem is when you come in and you start using the law to enforce it. It was just recently. Recently, I say that. It was probably about 12 or 15 years ago, but it feels recent to me, where you couldn't even buy alcohol at a store.
There are still counties
on Sunday
where on Sunday you cannot buy alcohol.
And then it's like they moved it to like 12:30 in the afternoon.
Yeah.
And this is all theocratic bullshit that, look, it's not your job to regulate this. If you see people buying alcohol as not honoring the Lord's day, that's their problem. That is not your problem. You don't have to buy alcohol. You don't have to drink it. Stay home. Okay, because stay home and drink juice.
Do you know what I love though? Sometimes culture forms around all sorts of things. And when I was a kid, until I was probably in my early 20s, on Sundays in England, you could only buy alcohol after a certain time. So pubs were allowed to open for 2 hours over lunch, and then they could open again at 7:30. There were these kind of arbitrary and weird impositions on things, but it generated a culture, right?
Yeah.
So it meant that on Sunday, people did go to the pub for a couple of hours at lunchtime. And if you're a member of a club, that could have an extra hour, right? So people would join clubs. And then there'd be the queue at the off license, the bottle shop, whatever you call them there, at 7:30 waiting for it to open. And it would be kind of sociable, right? Because you'd all be waiting for So I don't know. That kind of generated a sort of English subculture when it came to drink, which I don't know. I'm not defending it, these arbitrary laws, but I'm just saying that people have creative responses to them. But on the issue of gambling, I live in Australia, and Australia is gambling obsessed. Okay, so no tobacco can advertise or sponsor a sport event, but gambling, that's everywhere. All the pubs are ruined because they've got screens everywhere, because they've got it's rubbish. The pubs are also bookies. Okay, it's in the same place, so it is awful. They've got screens in every wall. I don't blame them. They've got poker machines, gambling machines in them. That's what generates their income, because the beer is taxed to death. And it's basically, government have created a nightmare where, because gambling is allowed and alcohol is really highly taxed, pubs are crap. You don't want to go in one. And when I went to England, it was so refreshing to go in a pub and it was like no screens and like
Yeah,
just
I actually
beer
had to talk to
and
people.
people talking. Yeah, it was like and when people come to like when Aussies go to it, and oh, your pubs are so great. I'm like, yeah, why don't you do it here?
Yeah.
But that's it. So like, and one of the differences is this, right? Somebody might have a drinking problem, and they might drink themselves to death, but it's going to take years. Okay, it's going to take years. Some of them might have a smoking addiction, and they might get lung cancer from it, from awful cigarettes that have got, you know, the scrapings of a tobacco factory in them. But it's going to take years. With gambling, you can lose you and your family's entire life savings in
one
one
bad
go.
night.
Sure.
Yeah.
And so gambling is a problem. Now, I'm with you. Like, it's for a whole state to it's crazy.
Well, I mean, I'm not advocating that we have a casino on every corner, but I mean,
The individual's responsibility.
there's no reason we shouldn't have a special district in Atlanta where you can have a casino or two, and it doesn't have to be in people's neighborhoods.
The underground would have been perfect.
It would have.
They tried a few times to repurpose the underground, but no.
Yeah, and look, I'm not with prohibition. Prohibition doesn't work. I'm just saying that gambling, I can see gambling is a different problem because you can literally financially not only yourself but your entire family in one go.
Sure, but I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think it's a church's job to probably teach people not to do that. I still don't think it's the state of Georgia's job to stop it. You know what I mean? I think again, it compromises individual liberty. If a person wants to put themselves in that kind of risk and not be responsible, well, I mean, they should be free.
It's the risk safety. Yeah. Libertarians place more emphasis on risk. Socialists place it on safety.
It's true.
So if you want to be really safe,
that's a good way to put it.
If you want free healthcare and guaranteed 3 meals a day and all of that, well, you can have that. It's called jail.
Yeah.
You can go to jail, and you won't get burgled probably, and all of that. But that's not freedom, right? The more freedom you want, the riskier it's going to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm all Jamie and I always talk every time we go on a trip together for like a show or something, or a case. We always have a chat about airport security. And how it's a joke. It's smoke and mirrors, and I can't even tell you.
Takes anyone.
It does it, and there was at least they've lightened it up with the taking your belt off, your shoes off, all this stuff. But you used to have to do all this. I remember the days where you could actually just walk through security, like there was just you walk through like you were going into the courthouse. Practically nothing you needed to do. Maybe you emptied your pockets, but it wasn't a very long process. There was never a line for it. And you just went right through, and you could meet your party at the gate. Remember, you could go eat at the restaurants beyond the gate. You didn't need a ticket. That was normal before 9/11. 9/11 was used by the United States government and the parties that be to take away more freedoms. They always have an excuse, and that was the one at the time. COVID-19 would be another great example of how freedom disappears as soon as there's a crisis that's either present and real or manufactured. It doesn't matter.
So our freedoms are at the mercy of the insurance companies.
Yeah, of course it is.
That's what happens.
Yeah, that's what happens.
Insurance companies say we can't insure your airline unless you do X, Y, Z.
Exactly.
And it's happened in the churches as well. Not just churches, but anyone that works with young people in Australia now, there's one insurer. There's only one insurer left.
Really?
That will insure whether you're the Scouts, whatever. One insurer left, and when they pull out, that leaves only government.
Good luck with that, right?
Because the government's self-insured, right? They don't need insurance; they're exempt from it, and so you'll only have government-run things for young people, and that's not good.
Nope, that's not good at all.
All right, what's our next question?
We got one from Christopher.
Okay.
I kind of scribbled this down. What prayers can I say inside my home to cleanse unwanted energy? And what protection prayers can he say to protect himself?
Okay, so this is a great example here to really give you a very powerful solution to a very common spiritual, religious, or metaphysical problem. There is only one exorcism that the church offers that is licit for the laity to use. Only one. It's a minor exorcism, but you don't need anything more than that because you wouldn't be performing it on a person. You're talking about using it to protect yourself or the house. And it is the St. Michael's prayer. It is an actual, legitimate, minor exorcism that the laity can use. Saint Michael, the archangel, defend us in battle, be our safeguard against the wickedness and sneers of the devil. May God rebuke him, we humbly pray. And do thou, O Prince of the heavenly host, by the power of God, cast into hell Satan and all the evil spirits who prowl about the world, seeking the ruin and destruction of souls. You commit that to memory or print it out until you learn it. And you always have an exorcism that you can apply to all situations, a prayer that you can go to. And remember, it's not an incantation. All right. I think the church sometimes gets accused of being a little magical when it has like a set prayer for this and a set thing for that. This is not what this is about. Okay. The point of a set prayer, okay, rather than maybe the Protestant and be like, oh, you don't need that. Just pray to Jesus and he'll protect you. The reason that we have set prayers like this is so that you can suspend your conscious mind and sort of let your spirit surrender to the Holy Spirit, because as Scripture says, we do not know how to pray as we ought. It allows us the ability, it gives us something to focus the rational mind on so that the Holy Spirit can come in and fill in the gaps and pray in a perfect way, something that we ourselves cannot pray perfectly. That's the point of set prayers. It's not about repetition. It's not about memorization, and it's definitely not an incantation. It is here to suspend the rational thought so that the Holy Spirit can work, because we're always fighting God. With every thought, with every feeling, we're always fighting the will of God. This allows you something to suspend that so that God can act more actively in your life without you blocking the path of grace. And so that's why this is an important one. And then again, it's also an intercession to Saint Michael, who's the patron saint for things like protection against evil. So also a very good one for a Catholic or any Christian to use. I teach it to everybody. Sometimes it's like, I find that sometimes the non-Catholic Christians are more receptive to it than even the Catholic Christians.
That is
are.
true.
Have you noticed?
I give almost all of our clients, that's like a automatic, is the St. Michael's prayer. Sometimes I'll use it over the phone to see if they have a reaction to it. But I almost always give it to them kind of as homework. Yeah. That and a few of the Psalms to see if it helps with any problems. And a lot of the Protestants and even several pagan non-Christians have said they felt comfort by it. Yeah. So. Yeah.
Well, I mean, see.
I think Catholics are a bit. If you've grown up with this around you, you're kind of a bit numb to it.
Take it for granted.
I imagine, yeah.
Take it for granted. It is a problem. I was talking about that in a sermon. I think last week, actually, how we tend to take the glory of the church for granted because we grew up watching it, seeing it. It's not special anymore. And the brain gets a little adapted too easily, and so we sort of lose the wonder after seeing it so much. And if you're a cradle Catholic, God forbid, you're almost doomed if you don't keep yourself mindful, because you're just used to always seeing it. And if you grew up in like a big city where you had the big cathedral with the stained glass windows and everything. I mean, like some of the churches in Chicago are just gorgeous. I mean, if you grew up and that's your parish and you're seeing that every day, I mean, it becomes commonplace and you lose the wonder. So, I think sometimes the rational thought, even though it's a gift and it is a beautiful gift that we're given, it's the fundamentals to our sentience. And also intellect to be able to make good decisions, also our conscience. And so it's not a bad thing to have rational thought, but it can work against you in prayer just because we can sometimes rationalize ourselves away from grace. It's easy to do. And we get accustomed to it, and this world doesn't help because, we're in a very empirical society. Everything needs to be, observational, and that gets also in the way. A lot of times, when something sort of miraculous happens, I've even seen Christians second guess it and be like, well, maybe it was a coincidence, but at least it was good. Okay, I guess it could be a coincidence, but does it really matter if grace was, don't you think that grace can come through a coincidence too? I think so. So there's a lot of ways to look at this, but I think the lesson here is to maintain your mindfulness through it all. Don't lose your wonder. We grow up too fast spiritually. People are worried about their kids growing up too fast with all of the sexual imagery and everything else. But you know what a bigger problem is than even that? It's growing up too fast spiritually, to the point that you grow out of your capacity to experience wonder. And that's where you connect with God on that really core level. And so when people feel a little dry, a little dark night of the soul kind of thing going on, or maybe they're even teeter-tottering on the edge of atheism or agnosticism, it's usually because they lost their capacity for wonder. And that's where it becomes dangerous. So prayers like that can help, to prevent that.
Well, hence why Jesus said you had to be like a child.
Yeah, exactly.
Like a child.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Because they've got that wonder, they've not lost that.
They have not. And see, if
it's not maturity to lose that wonder. Like, you don't want to be childish as an adult,
right?
But being cynical is not mature,
right? Yeah, cynicism is different than just being objective and not allowing yourself to fall victim to just being, you want to always maintain a sense of awareness so that you can't be taking a ride either. But there are people that believe in everything. Everything's God. This is God.
Naivety is not a virtue.
That was the word I was looking for. Naivety. Yeah, we don't want to that either. It's always about balance. It's always about, to use a Buddhist term for those of you out there that prefer Buddhism, the middle path, right? Jesus walked it too, though. He everything that Jesus talked about was also very rational and very middle grounding. And Buddha was the entire foundation to his philosophical model, his approach towards what became the Buddhist religion, if you can call it a religion. I'm not sure it really entirely qualifies as one, but it has that dynamic, I guess, and it's the middle path. It's about not being too extreme in any set way, and I think that's the part of it I love the most. All right, so we're at the top of the next hour here, so we're going to listen to my next song. This was the song I wrote before the one you heard for the first break, and this one's called "The Last Door." I wrote this also. Not really. This one was not written with any kind of emotional scenario from my own life. It's really just an archetypal experience that I think, if you listen to the words that I tried to put in there in a meaningful way, hopefully, if you listen to these words, I think you'll relate in some way. All of us can relate to this at some point in time. So this one is, again, The Last Door.
Across your face, colors fading into something I can't name. We used to talk about 1,000 different futures. Now I'm staring down the one that finally came. You asked me softly if the road would still remember all the footsteps that we carved into its spine. I easy to define. There's a last door that somebody has to close, and the last tear that somebody has to show. There's a peace that feels a lot like letting go, and I swear I never wanted you to know, but I chose it anyway. God, I chose it anyway. The morning came without a hint of consolation, just the quiet of a bed with only sheets. I heard your laughter bleeding through the conversation of a ghost I never got the chance to meet. There was a letter in the drawer you must have written, every word a tiny monument to grace. But half the ink was smeared by things you never mentioned, and I felt every silence on my face. There's a last door that somebody has to close, and a last tear that somebody has to show. There's a peace that feels a lot like letting go, and I swear I never wanted you to know, but I chose it anyway. God, I chose it anyway. Maybe mercy isn't gentle, maybe mercy leaves a stain, maybe loving someone deeply means you carry all their pain. I keep seeing all the futures that we buried in the spring, how the hardest part of loving is the ending of the thing. There's a last door that somebody has to close, and the last breath that somebody has to hold. There's a quiet that feels colder than the snow, and I swear I never wanted you to know, but I chose it anyway. Yeah, I chose it anyway. If forgiveness has a voice, I hope it sings. And if heaven has a light, I hope it brings something warm for you. 'Cause I'm still walking through every shadow of the things I couldn't save. They never betray. A face in the water, pale as bone. A cry in the wind, a voice not my own. They pull with invisible chains. My name on their lips like a mournful refrain.
Welcome back, everyone, to the third and final hour of this first episode of Season 13 for Vestiges After Dark. We've been taking some of your questions. It's been a kind of subdued night, I think. It's kind of nice, a little peaceful. But we're able to get into the details, I think, a little bit more. But, you know, after the long break, I've noticed, after the fall break, it's hard to get people remembering that we still do the show. So maybe we just have to do more specials. I don't know. We'll figure it out. But we're happy that those of you who are joining us tonight are with us. And it is a complete waste because, of course, we have our podcast audience, which is, like I said, where the bulk of our listeners are, and we appreciate each and every one of them. So if you've got questions, more questions, log them into the various chats around the internet. We are watching. You can also call into the show, 207-544-1983. That's 207-544-1983. You can even text that number a question if you want, but we would prefer that you'd call us because it's more fun to talk to you. All right? All right. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back in just a moment.
Is that
Yeah, Tracy just reminded me on the chat there that it's the State of the Union tonight. That always quiets down things. That and sports shows. So we're really appreciative of those of you who decided to choose us over Donald Trump, because I mean that's quite an honor right there. All right, April. I know that you had something about dowsing rods you wanted to talk about.
Yeah, there was a question actually from Moosh, and she was saying something about that she had a landscaper who used them in planting some trees. And she was talking about having some unusual experiences herself. And I have a couple. That's one of the tools that I use when I do paranormal investigations, is almost always use the dowsing rods.
Sure.
And so, she'd mentioned about them spinning out of control. I've had that happen.
Really?
Yeah, it would just start. You can tell because you can feel like the energy pulling on the dowsing rods, and then they'll just start kind of going in a circle. And then another paranormal investigator in this area has used them, and his will spin so fast that they actually go flying through the air. But the couple of the instances that I've had, one is we went to. It was actually our very first, what I would call like a professional paranormal investigation. And one of the supposed ghosts that was there was a lawyer who his spirit was trapped there. And we always try to say like a prayer to help them move on and that kind of thing. And so I was using the dowsing rods, and I was asking, are you here? And of course they crossed for yes. And then I said, do you want to move on? And they crossed for yes. And I said, do you see a bright light? And it said yes. And then kind of pointed to where it was. And so they swung to this certain area. And I said, just go that way. And I could feel the rods pulling. Mm-hmm. And then all at once, it was almost like they let go, because they went like they sprung back, almost like on a spring. And we didn't get any more interactions with whatever that entity was.
Interesting.
Yeah, so that was cool.
I've got a pair of copper dowsing rods. Patty Negri, our colleague from Ghost Adventures, we got together in Las Vegas once, and she had hers with her, and I got the exact brand. She shared with me where she got them, and I went and got myself a pair. They produce some very, very interesting results. I will say.
Never used them. I've seen them used, but I've never used them.
They're very easy to use.
I know how it works. I mean, originally they were supposed to find water.
That's what they do best. Yeah. That's what they do best. But I would say that I like it more than a pendulum, just because I think it's a little easier to work with on the go. You don't have to be so still with them. They kind of, you can walk with them and they work. So I do like using them. I would say I've used them with mixed results. I've tried different experiments with them. I try, one of the most recent ones I did is when the Powerball was at like a little over $1 billion.
Yeah.
I said, okay, we're gonna use the dowsing rods to see if it can give me some better numbers.
Why not?
So I went and just went through every number, and I said, just cross when it's the number that it's going to be. I actually won. I won some money with that ticket, but I didn't win the $1 billion.
Obviously.
Although you probably wouldn't know, because I'd still be doing this.
Me too. Yeah.
You probably wouldn't even know it.
It wouldn't change me.
In-person appearances.
Yeah. It's true. But yeah, I did actually win with the ticket. So I did find some of the numbers, and I guess I would call that a mixed result. But maybe with a little more focus, I can get the $1 billion next time. So we'll stay tuned. We'll try it again. How have you used them, April? You said you use them on investigations. Like, what do you actually do?
Usually, I almost always my first question is, are there any spirits here? And
so you just basically ask questions and see if they can manipulate the rods.
Yeah, I'll get either yes or no, and then sometimes I'll say, "Can you point to where you are?" And they'll point in a particular direction, and then I'll say, I'm going to walk in that direction, guide me, and when I get to where you are, cross the rods. And there'll be times it'll take me straight, and then it'll make me turn and go all kinds of different ways.
Yeah, I've seen Patty do it that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they're pretty accurate.
And apparently there's a way, that you can use them if you can use them to find unmarked graves too.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what you're saying, right?
Yep. Unmarked graves, water.
And somehow or other, they'll spin, I don't remember which one it is. I need to test it in the field, but they'll spin one particular way if it's a female that's buried in the grave, and another one in the opposite
I hadn't
way.
heard
if it's a
that.
male.
Huh.
Yeah. That was kind of a cool thing that someone was telling us. Now we haven't, like I said, I haven't tried that one out in the field yet, but that's something pretty cool.
You gonna bring them to your investigation?
They're usually I have
you
a
up?
backpack that has, I call my go bag, and I keep them in there.
If the opportunity presents itself, I'd like to try it.
Yeah.
Depending on how it starts out. So I'd like to try it.
There are some people that cannot douse.
Yeah.
And I don't know what it is. They just can't do it.
I guess I'll find out if I'm one.
Yeah.
They're good for finding like lost objects too. Yeah, they can point you in the direction of a lost object, and you can like we're talking about. You can ask questions, and there's different ways it can answer. You know, I find it useful for certain things, like I said, but I mean there is limitation. You know, there is limitation. Most types of divination aren't that greatly suited towards like I said, like predicting.
I would imagine if they're
numbers.
copper and then you've got your hands right on. I mean, your energy is literally going into it. So
I mean, that's the mindset.
You could probably influence it if you don't clear your head.
That's the mindset. Is that's what it is? The copper. Father Chris, you ever used dowsing rods? Ever experienced anything with them?
No, I watched oh gosh, I show my age now. I watched a program.
You're still younger than me.
Back in the in the early 90s, and it was a farmer in England, like he was fully tweeded up, and he used it was like a branch of it. It was wood anyway. It wasn't copper. It was wood, and it was for water dowsing.
Oh,
And, it certainly seemed very well. It seemed everywhere he indicated there was a water source. So, you know, and it wasn't like it was a sort of a like a scientific approach. Like the production team that was where they were coming from, and they were all quite surprised how accurate he was. So, but no, never used them. But I know they are used. They are used mainly for, like my experience in England is for finding water sources.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was what their original use was, I think, and in my experience, it has worked. I've tried it, and years ago, but it does work. Then again, I was in Florida. I mean, the whole damn state is a water source.
I was gonna say, you're on top of a whole bunch of water.
Yeah,
the rod's like, yep, you found it.
I mean, it's true.
Way to go there, bud.
Them so that when they're not indicating, right, I'll build a house here.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Good luck finding what spot that might be, though.
Right.
There's always sinkholes everywhere in Florida. You never know when you're going to go. When you're going to go down.
Cellars in your houses. Oh,
that's true. It's why we don't. Yeah, it's true. It's true. You don't really start seeing them till you get to Georgia, because of that. And even in Georgia, they kind of build them halfway. It's a very common thing in Georgia to build a house on an incline and put half the cellar underground and the other half has a door that goes out to the yard.
Right.
That's a very common way to build a house in Georgia. In New England, it's all like a genuine foundational cellar. It's like a pit. And sometimes they have a little bulkheads
The
that
house
go out.
I grew up in had a cellar like that. It was a Victorian era house.
Oh, yeah.
And so the cellar was obviously built up first, but
Yeah, just about all the
that
houses in
place
Illinois
was-
are like that.
That cellar was haunted.
Oh, really?
It was a shocking place. Oh, yeah.
Hey, if something's going to be haunted, it's going to be in the dadgum cellar or in the attic.
Well,
It was a dark place.
Yeah.
I think there's actually a reason for that. People have asked me before, why are why is it because it's scary or whatever? It's like no. Places like attics and cellars tend to be more haunted than the rest of a piece of property is because for whatever reason, this energy does not necessarily want to interact with the energy of the living. So typically cellars and attics are quiet, right? They're not places where we spend a lot of time. And what's interesting is when you have a house that you finish the basement, then it starts to behave like the rest of the house, I mean, that's what makes hauntings around living people more interesting, because that's when we tend to see people reporting that they're having problems and that they need help. I don't think we have too many. Can you remember any case where someone says, I've got a haunting in the basement, it needs to go? It's usually because it's affecting the whole house.
I had one. You didn't come on this. It was a house cleansing that I was sent on the north side of Atlanta, and the complaint was they had just finished the basement and made it into an apartment. And actually had a renter down there that was complaining of things, so I went and cleansed it, and the energy subsided. But there was a lot of elemental energy in the area. It put it up to a reserve.
Yeah.
So it, I don't think there was anything negative going on. She never called back to say anything had picked back up. So
yeah, we renovated ours. So I mean, I was a kid, but the cellar was always like, it was literally, cellars were often built there to be flood cellars because the water table wasn't far away, and so the idea was obviously it floods the cellar and not the house. And so it was always a kind of dark and dank sort of place. I think my big sisters used to annoy me, and to be big sisters would force me down into the cellar and close the door, and that sort of thing. So I probably had some trauma related to it, but while I was a kid, my parents renovated the cellar, and my sisters ended up with their bedrooms down there, which is the best place for big sisters, is the cellar.
All the cackling and laughing.
That's it. So then it was inhabited, and that's I think if anything it made it worse.
Yeah, I mean the energy doesn't interact well. I mean, what is considered the energy that produces a haunting doesn't typically play nice with the energy that surrounds living things, and so that's what usually creates issues. But most of the time,
but now you mention it, and now I know what that means. I suspect it was elemental.
Yeah, it usually is. Most hauntings are actually elemental, not the dead. Yeah.
Yep.
Most of them are, which is why it's usually very ill-defined. It doesn't have any particular characteristic other than things being disturbed, or this feeling of being watched, or this unsettling feeling. Most hauntings are not dead people, plain and simple. But the problem with elementals is that it can be a large range of things that require different solutions.
Yeah, it can be hard to get rid of completely.
It can. Sometimes the best thing to do is just to get the hell out of there and move. But I mean, that's not always possible.
Or try to appease it.
Well, yeah, you could do that too, but good luck. It doesn't always work.
Hope you get the right one.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. Okay, so do we have any other questions out there that we haven't gotten to?
I've not seen any new ones on YouTube.
Nothing, April, that you've seen?
What say you, April?
I haven't seen any either.
Okay, no new questions. Okay, that's fine. So, April, you're like, this is where Brandon comes in, and he's always got one on the back burner, or actually probably has about 30 on the back burner. So, I don't know if you have any, but if you want to throw something out there to keep it interesting, go right ahead.
I'm afraid it's probably my little cat that threw this, because my little cat came to cover me in fur. Oh. And, of course, as soon as a cat appears on a screen, that's the end of...
and everything, right?
Sorry, April, carry on.
No, you're fine. No, I went through and pulled stuff off of the network, and I've got about 5 pages of questions, actually.
Oh.
Okay.
Well done.
That's fine. That's fine. Or you could ask your own. You always have good questions for yourself, too.
Yeah. Well, one of them that's on the network, it says... where does the belief that one needs a personal relationship with Jesus to be saved? And did the early church fathers teach that? Because I'm not finding it in the Bible. Okay,
well, it's not implicitly stated in the Bible, but it is it is generally the overall aura of the meaning behind many of the things that are said in the Bible is that the whole point is that God wants a personal relationship with us, but that terminology is not explicitly said in that way. And
It's
I
that
think
God became a person.
yeah, exactly. And that's really the foundation. Now, important point to make about this. There is a difference between God wanting a personal relationship with us through the instrument of the church, through the unity of his people, and saying, he's my buddy, he belongs to me, he does what I want, treating him as though, you've got something special that the rest of us don't have. That's not what that means.
That's weaponizing it, actually.
It is. It is.
You see, when I first encountered Christianity in a propositional sense, do I believe this or not? When I was about 17, that was a Protestant church, a Baptist church. I say Baptist, but it's not like your Baptists, right? It's a different thing.
Yeah.
It's a bit more like Presbyterian, right? Anyway, but and they would talk about this language of personal relationship with Jesus. Do you have a personal relationship with Jesus? And you know what? It took me 10, 15 years to figure out what that meant. Because I thought, what do you mean? Like, does he phone me up? Like, I mean, what are you talking about? And so, whereas I'd reached the leap of faith of saying, actually, I believe in the resurrection, and so I'm a Christian, and I read the scriptures, and I go to church, and read books, and deepen my understanding of the faith. That's actually what a personal relationship with Jesus is. It's that I'm a person, and I am investing my time to better understand God, and I do that intellectually through study. I do that practically through serving other people. I do that liturgically by taking part in the liturgy of the church, the rituals of the church. That's what a personal relationship with Jesus is. And it took me, because I thought I was somehow missing out, that people were getting text messages from God that I was missing out on. And of course it's not true. It's not true, because if it was like that, then you'd have no need for faith. Faith is the deliberate decision to accept the truth that Christ is the way, the truth, and the life, that he lived, died, and rose again, and is preparing a place for us in heaven, and to invest our time and energy in seeking to deepen our understanding of that in ways that and part of that understanding is the way that you live your life. And it took me 10, 15 years to figure out that's what personal relationship with Jesus meant. And actually, I was quite annoyed with that language. People didn't mean, obviously, people were meaning well, but it's actually really confusing language to use. And the way I think it is often used now, especially in America, I've been there and I see how you talk to each other. It's almost like it's almost like,
and that is the Father Chrisism for this episode. There you go. I've been there. I've been there. I've seen how you talk to each other.
It's true.
Do you know what? Left, right, up, down. Up, down. They all speak to me far kinder than they speak to each other.
Oh, that's true.
Anyway, I think it's also used as a sort of weaponization to say, are you one of those, it's like you say, are you Catholic or Christian? It's like Catholics are Christians.
I've been asked that, and it's just like, oh my God.
It's trying to draw a line to say, do you have a personal relationship with Jesus, or do you just do all that church mumbo jumbo?
Yeah.
And I don't like that. I think it's bogus. I think it's so if it's being used in a weaponized way, then clearly that's uncharitable, therefore unchristian. And actually, if it's being used in a kind of lazy way, it's far more helpful to say to somebody who's seeking to become a Christian, to say, instead of saying, do you have a personal relationship with Jesus, say, what it means to be a Christian, or what it means when people say personal relationship with Jesus is learning about Jesus, reading the scriptures, going to mass, all of those things, integrating knowledge with your decisions and how you live your life. That's what it means. And I don't know why people persist in this anti-language, which is things like personal relationship with Jesus.
Well, because I think it makes them
It's not
feel
helpful.
special. It makes them feel it's about them. This is the problem with a lot of Christianity today, is that they have made it about themselves. And I try to teach people that if it's really about salvation, if you're a Christian because you really care about salvation, which is not necessarily about going to heaven, that's just the end result of it. That's not the reason for doing it. Salvation is about restoration. It's about restoring God's will and perfecting his creation. It's going to heaven. That's the happy consequence. That's not the reason for doing it. But I tell people, if you really do care about that, if you really do care about that enough to be a Christian, then the only way to really achieve it is by being the instrument of grace to other people. And then by virtue of doing that, it opens itself up to you. So I always try to warn people, salvation's going to be very elusive if you're just doing it for yourself. Salvation is only truly achievable as you give of yourself to others. And that's the purpose of the church. It's why I try to tell people, you can't take this attitude, I don't need the church. Because God set it up that way, not to make you miserable. Because, churches can make you miserable.
Or you're always praying for yourself. You're supposed to be praying for other people.
Other
You're
people.
missing the point.
You're missing the point.
Yeah.
And it's about that relationship.
Salvation is simultaneously, of course, it's personal to you. Like my salvation's important to me, right? But saying, "Oh, my personal relationship with Jesus," as though as though Jesus is a possession of mine, which is not true. It's a bit like, Marina said, she's just come back from eating, just ate him at mass. It feels quite personal. Yeah, absolutely.
She has another good one there too. She has another good one up there.
She does.
Yeah, she says, as an Orthodox YouTuber once said, it's a kingdom, not a cubicle.
Right.
Yeah, that's right. But now people get this wrong about communion. You should not be taking communion. You receive communion.
You receive it.
Because Christ is self-offering.
Yeah.
He's choosing the kenotic life to empty himself. So it is correct to say we feed on him at mass, but not because we're cannibals or because we're hunters. It's because he's freely offered himself. And that's how it is in the life of faith. And by saying, how is your relationship with Jesus? Like, I don't have a different relationship with Jesus than you do, or than St. Paul did.
Right.
We have the same relationship with Jesus. He's our Lord and God and Savior, and has offered himself for us. That's the relationship we all have in common. And so yes, it's a bit like when we say the creed. I like that the new translation has gone back to I, not we. I believe in. Okay, credo in unum Deo. I believe in one God. We say the I together. Mm-hmm. That's what makes it the we. So it's both personal and corporate at the same time.
And that's the other reason, again, we were talking about like ritual prayer and talking about repetition. A lot of that is also to create a unity prayer. It's not about what you individually want to say. And I hate when people say it's what's in your heart. No,
it's too sentimental.
Yeah, way too sentimental.
Yeah.
And it's missing the whole point of spirituality in general. Forget about religion.
And it becomes a prayer of ego, actually. I mean, well-meaning, I'm not saying that these people are evil, but it becomes an ego prayer.
Yeah.
Because you can't separate yourself out from it.
No.
When it comes to repetition, this is one that really bloody annoys me when people, vain repetition.
Yeah.
Like, well, speak for yourself. But when I every time I say the Hail Mary is a new moment in time. Mm-hmm. And there's the great Fulton Sheen story about this. He says, do you tell your wife you love her? And he says, yes. He says, do you tell her every day? Oh, of course. Oh, doesn't she find it repetitive? No, because in fact you need to renew that love.
Reinforcement.
So it's not. Yeah. So it is repetition, but it's not in vain.
No, and it's not even. Well, it's not redundant either. Repetition doesn't mean redundant. I mean, like you said, it's always a new moment in time. Anyway. Yeah, I like that. I like that.
So there is no repetition.
not to get off subject here, but I know that there are people that were wondering what
There he
Heathcliff is doing. So he's too cozy upstairs right now
handsome.
he's watching Vestiges right now. That's what's on the screen back there.
Little ginger snap.
Yeah, but he's having a really good time, that cat. And I thought, well, I'll show you him. He's there. He's just enjoying himself
Looking
too much.
slightly annoyed.
Yeah. But he does love Vestiges After Dark. You know, the funniest thing is that they have a little ritual that they do up there. The cat started this thing. It wasn't something that they started. But when they watch the show upstairs while we air it here downstairs, and they got this little thing going. And when I was testing the internet, when we had those internet problems and I was switching over to fiber and making sure that I had the right settings and we weren't having any kind of like buffering issues, I was playing various moments of Vestiges After Dark where it had the intro song. And as soon as that cat hears the intro song to Vestiges, he comes running and wants to sit down on you. He gets mad if you're not laying down because he wants to lay with you and watch the show. He loves it. You know, it's really quite funny. But you know, people think that animals don't really understand things like music, but they do. One of the most interesting things about Heathcliff is he has a favorite song, and it's the Skyboat song. You know, and he loves the Skyboat song. And of course, Outlander, if you watch the Outlander, they have a very beautiful variation of it.
Sing me a song.
Yeah.
That is gone.
And he has that. We have that show has a Yule fireplace that starts with that song. So every now and then when Tracy and I are wanting to enjoy a quiet scotch, we'll actually put the Yule video on, even though it's not so Christmassy that you can't do it the rest of the year. It's just cozy. And we put that on. He hears that and he would always just be like, oh, I want to be in here, because he loves that singer's voice and he loves that song. So I thought, okay, it's just a pattern, right? An animal recognizing a pattern. But it was so much more than that, because I bought a CD, or it's actually a digital album that had all these Scottish folk songs on it, and Skyboat song was on there, but it was sung completely differently. It didn't even sound like the Outlander theme song, which is very ethereal. Mm-hmm. It was sung by men. It was several men singing it, and
my step grandfather was a singing teacher, and he ran a couple of choirs. He was actually quite a famous countertenor, but I had singing lessons with him, and everyone that had singing lessons, the first thing he had to sing was the Skyboat song.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So you would know it's probably close to this version.
Range.
Yeah, it's probably this thing.
So I mean, I can sing it if you want, but it's
only if you pour me a scotch so I can enjoy it.
Yeah.
It's about Bonnie Prince Charlie. It's about the escape of the young pretender. Yeah.
So I put that on when we were playing.
Good royal song. You should all sing it in America.
Yeah, we should.
Rediscover that you need to have a king.
Yeah, that's right. I don't think we have enough. We have enough royal family going on as it is right now. So let's get over this one first.
You have our worst ones.
Yeah. But anyway, so I put the Skyboat song on. It doesn't sound anything like the Outlander, and he came running. He heard that song and he knew it, even though it was sung differently. It was in a different key practically, I think. And he still knew the song. So cats do, or at least cats, I don't know about all animals, but cats do understand music, and they have their favorites, and there's certain things that they like. It's really quite fun.
My dog would understand the treat bag. My cats, they also know the sound of the tuna can or the music I like to play if I'm cleaning or sitting around the house. They'll usually respond to it.
Marina's got a question here. Not the point, since these are prayers of the church, and who cares about my feelings? What is the mindset or state to adopt when praying these prayers to do them properly?
I think she was going to reword it.
Okay. All right. So let's wait for she's rewriting it.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's go ahead and wait for that to come in. But in the meantime, Father Chris will entertain you with the Skyboat song. And see, look, your cat came running. He's waiting for it now. See?
Oh, she's run away now because you said you were going to do that.
Oh no. We need to get a Lagavulin. Let's get one right now. Yeah, bring it down.
You were talking about
That'd be
repetitive prayers and their meanings and stuff. One of the ones I enjoy doing that you taught me back when I first came to the church was the Jesus prayer. I believe, is it Orthodox?
No.
That's
Orthodox prayer?
very Orthodox. Yeah.
You know, Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on me, a sinner. Whenever my mind is too, like at the end of the, I have real bad insomnia sometimes. My brain's going 110 miles an hour. Get intrusive thoughts, all that. I'll start reciting that over and over again, and after about 15, 20 minutes, I find myself calm and able to go to sleep.
It's powerful.
It's very powerful.
I use it at several points because I feel like I need it constantly.
Well, don't we all? You imagine the power of that. You know, you have a group of people in a room and you're all reciting it out loud, just repetition.
They will
Kinda
use
like the
prayer
rosary.
beads that way.
Yeah.
They do.
Okay.
It is like a rosary for them.
Is it?
They
Okay.
have prayer beads, but that's typically how they use it. They don't necessarily do Hail Marys the same way, but they do the Jesus prayer. It's part of hesychasm. It's a whole tradition of Orthodoxy, and
I was very fortunate.
I do
when
like
was
the
at
Orthodox, I
seminary.
have to say.
I like their spirituality. I don't care
Yeah.
much for the cultural wars, but everything else I like about it.
The ethnophilicism of them.
Yeah.
But I was very lucky when I was at seminary. Metropolitan Callistos Ware was one of our teachers, and he's written. I've put a link in. This is just somebody's a very quick one of some